Yeah, man, I'm so pumped up for Trump's 2020 MAGA speech. Defeat the radical left fascists.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm going out of order, but I hope you'll excuse that I'm riding the bandwagon for now.
Friends, delegates, and distinguished guests, please. I stand before you tonight, honored by your support, proud of the extraordinary progress we have made together over the last 4 incredible years, and brimming with confidence in the bright future we will build for America over the next 4 years.
Yeah, so much progress. Look how well America's doing right now.
We begin this evening. Our thoughts are with the wonderful people who have just come through the wrath of Hurricane Laura.
Some irrelevant stuff about the hurricane going on right now.
We are one national family.
Coming straight out the gates with the platitudes, are you? We have never been more divided than now.
And we will always protect, love, and care for each other. Here tonight are the people who have made my journey possible and filled my life with so much joy. For her incredible service to our nation and its children, I want to thank our magnificent First Lady.
Name dropping all of Trump's goons right here.
My fellow Americans, tonight, with a heart full of gratitude and boundless optimism, I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States. The Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, goes forward united, determined, and ready to welcome millions of Democrats, independents, and anyone who believes in the greatness of America and the righteous heart of the American people.
So anyone who still wants to cling to that illusion. Also, I'm skipping all the applause.
In a new term as president, we will again build the greatest economy in history, quickly returning to full employment.
Full employment? How's that possible?
Soaring incomes, and record prosperity.
Well, sure, your economy is geared for the rich and letting them prosper, and in fact, they've actually been continuing to get richer throughout the pandemic. But what are you going to do for the American working class?
We will defend America against all threats and protect America against all dangers.
Why don't you protect us from yourself?
We will lead America into new frontiers of ambition and discovery, and we will reach for new heights of national achievement.
Platitudes.
We will rekindle new faith in our values, new pride in our history.
If you knew about American history, you wouldn't be so proud of it.
And a new spirit of unity that can only be realized through love for our great country.
I'll love the country when it's worth being loved.
Because we understand that America is not a land cloaked in darkness. America is the torch that enlightens the entire world.
How? Our values are fucking regressive.
Gathered here at our beautiful and majestic White House, known all over the world as the People's House.
Because it totally represents the people's interest.
We cannot help but marvel at the miracle that is our great American story.
There's nothing miraculous about it. Countries exist all over the world.
This has been the home of larger-than-life figures like Teddy Roosevelt.
America is not unique in its ability to create larger-than-life characters. Skip.
In recent months, our nation and the entire planet has been struck by a new and powerful invisible enemy.
Actually, most of the world with good healthcare systems, you know, the ones with single-payer systems, are doing just fine.
Like those brave Americans before us, we are meeting this challenge.
Like shit we are. We have the most cases in the world.
We are delivering life-saving therapies and will produce a vaccine before the end of the year.
I suppose that's not impossible, but no vaccines so far have passed clinical trials.
Or maybe even sooner. We will defeat the virus, end the pandemic, and emerge stronger than ever before.
This pandemic, where millions have been laid off and lost their health insurance as a part of it, it's never been more clear that having your health insurance tied to your work is a terrible idea fundamentally. This is the time for drastic change, and it could never be more obvious that we need it. And yet, both parties, especially you, are fighting to keep it the same and to keep the health insurance companies gouging the prices of everything and making sure nobody has health insurance they need.
What united generations past was an unshakable confidence in America's destiny and an unbreakable faith in the American people.
Have you seen how stupid the American people are? I mean, they elected you.
They knew that our country is blessed by God and has a special purpose in this world.
And how exactly would you know that?
It is that conviction that inspired the formation of our union,
Our independence was a political movement, not a religious one.
our westward expansion, the abolition of slavery.
Why are you crediting religion with this? Christianity literally sanctions slavery.
The passage of civil rights, the space program, and the overthrow of fascism, tyranny, and communism.
Clearly, fascism is mounting a comeback.
This towering American spirit has prevailed over every challenge and lifted us to the summit of human endeavor. And yet, despite all of our greatness as a nation, everything we have achieved is now endangered. This is the most important election in the history of our country. At no time before have voters faced a clearer choice between two parties,
And that's pretty scary considering that both parties are a bunch of corporatist hacks.
two visions, two philosophies, or two agendas. This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny.
Unfortunately, socialism is nowhere on the horizon of America.
It will decide whether we rapidly create millions of high-paying jobs or whether we crush our industries and send millions of these jobs overseas, as has foolishly been done for many decades.
One person claps.
Your vote will decide whether we protect law-abiding Americans or whether we give free rein to violent anarchists and agitators and criminals who threaten our citizens.
Clearly don't know what anarchism means, and you're clearly just trying to crush any dissent, just like a regular neo-fascist would.
And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it.
Your radical nationalism has been a stain on America for a long time.
At the Democrat National Convention, Joe Biden and his party repeatedly assailed America as a land of racial, economic, and social injustice.
Is it not? Millions of people are being kept as wage slaves all over the country. Even now, conservative evangelist movements are fighting against men and women's rights to bodily integrity.
So tonight I ask you a simple question. How can the Democrat Party ask to lead our country when it spends so much time tearing down our country?
How can a party create meaningful change if it won't admit that America has deep, fundamental flaws?
In the left's backward view, they do not see America as the most free, just, and exceptional nation on earth.
How are we free? America has the highest prison population in the entire world per capita. How are we just? We have a retributive criminal justice system which relies on keeping people imprisoned to make money. How are we exceptional? The most exceptional thing about America is our bloated military budget, which gives us so many weapons that we can strong-arm other countries into doing whatever we want.
Instead, they see a wicked nation that must be punished for its sins.
I don't care about punishment or revenge. All I care is that American people have their basic needs met by the American government.
Our opponents say that redemption for you can only come from giving power to them.
Nobody ever said that.
This is a tired anthem spoken by every repressive movement throughout history. But in this country, we don't look to career politicians for salvation. In America, we don't turn to government
Well, the big businesses certainly don't take care of us.
to restore our souls. We put our faith in Almighty God.
Your expectations that miracles will suddenly happen is why the lives of millions of Americans will never improve.
Joe Biden is not a savior
No, his primary purpose is to get power out of your hands.
of America's soul He is the destroyer of America's jobs.
Job growth under Obama and Biden were higher than job growth under you.
And if given the chance, he will be the destroyer of American greatness.
America is not great, and if the coronavirus pandemic and our response to police brutality has shown anything, it should be that.
For 47 years, Joe Biden took the donations of blue-collar workers, gave them hugs and even kisses, and told them he felt their pain. And then he flew back to Washington and voted to ship our jobs to China and many other distant lands.
Jobs are going to China because they're an industrial powerhouse that nobody can compete with.
Offshoring their jobs, opening their borders, and sending their sons and daughters to fight in endless foreign wars that never ended.
You are the commander-in-chief of the United States, and yet the military presence of the United States in the Middle East has not decreased. If anything, you have worsened tensions in the Middle East.
4 years ago, I ran for president because I could not watch this betrayal of our country any longer.
You wanted to be at the controls so you could drive an economy that would funnel as much money to yourself as possible.
I could not sit by as career politicians let other countries take advantage of us on trade, borders, foreign policy, and national defense.
Can't take advantage on borders. It's people who travel and immigrate, not countries.
Our NATO partners, as an example, were very far behind in their defense payments.
The NATO countries don't owe anybody any money.
But at my strong urging, they agreed to pay $130 billion more a year, the first time in over 20 years that they upped their payments.
Liar. They upped their payments in 2015 and 2016.
This $130 billion will ultimately go to $400 billion a year. And Secretary General Stoltenberg, who heads NATO, was amazed after watching for so many years and said that President Trump did what no one else was able to do.
I very much doubt he said that.
From the moment I left my former life behind, and it was a good life.
You never left your life behind. Your golf trips have cost American taxpayers $14 million so far.
I have done nothing but fight for you.
Lies.
I did what our political establishment never expected and could never forgive, breaking the cardinal rule of Washington politics. I kept my promise.
Let's see here. You promised to lock Hillary up. You haven't done that. You promised to repeal Obamacare. Haven't done that. You promised to build a Great Wall. You pretend to have done that, but you really didn't. And you promised to get us the hell out of the Middle East, and you have not done that.
Together we have ended the rule of the failed political class, and they are desperate to get their power back by any means necessary. You've seen that.
No, you're a fake populist. You have merely usurped the political class, and now you are ruling it.
They are angry at me because instead of putting them first, I very simply said America first.
You said Trump first.
Days after taking office, we shocked the Washington establishment and withdrew from the last administration's job-killing Trans-Pacific Partnership.
And you haven't been replacing all those trade agreements with better ones.
I then immediately approved the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines,
further incentivizing us to fuck up the environment, trading the future for the present gains.
ended the unfair and very costly Paris Climate Accord.
What will be even more costly is the huge environmental impacts we will face if we do not fight climate change now.
And secured for the first time American energy independence. We passed record-setting tax and regulation cuts.
Those regulations are meant to protect the environment, the workers, and the small businesses from being trampled over by giant corporations that support you. Your tax cuts have benefited the rich far more than the poor and have increased the national debt by trillions.
At a rate nobody had ever seen before.
And millions of Americans have lost their health insurance because of you.
Within 3 short years, we built the strongest economy in the history of the world.
No, that was a 10-year process that started with President Obama, and you just managed to not fuck it up.
Washington insiders asked me not to stand up to China. They pleaded with me to let China continue stealing our jobs, ripping us off.
We all see through the lies you use in your simplistic descriptions.
And robbing our country blind. But I kept my word to the American people. We took the toughest, boldest, strongest, and hardest hitting action against China in American history by far.
And because of your trade war, both countries have suffered economically.
They said that it would be impossible to terminate and replace NAFTA. But again, they were wrong. Earlier this year, I ended the NAFTA nightmare and signed the brand new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement into law.
That law made very few significant changes and would have a negligible effect in the overall economy.
And right now, auto companies and others are building their plants and factories in America, not firing their employees.
In the coronavirus pandemic, half of all manufacturing jobs have been deleted.
And not deserting us for other countries. In perhaps no area did the Washington special interests try harder to stop us than on my policy of pro-American immigration.
There's no such thing as anti-American immigration. Immigration is solely about America.
But I refuse to back down, and today America's borders are more secure than ever before. We ended catch and release, stopped asylum fraud, took down human traffickers who prey on women and children.
If you wanted to stop human trafficking, you'd make prostitution legal. That way, people won't rely on the black market to get their sex slaves.
And we have deported 20,000 gang members and 500,000 criminal aliens.
Yeah, deport all the brown people. Your extreme nationalism and xenophobia betrays you and makes it obvious that you are just a neo-fascist.
We have already built 300 miles of border wall.
Most of that is simply replacing pre-existing barriers. Only 5 miles of new wall have actually been constructed. And also, the US border is 5,000 miles long. It would take 60 years for you to finish at this rate.
And we are adding 10 new miles every single week. The wall will soon be complete, and it is working beyond our wildest expectations.
Most of the wall can be cut through by a simple handsaw, and some of it has collapsed by the strength of the wind. It has not prevented basically anybody from crossing the border.
You see, this country loves our law enforcement.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. You don't know shit. Some more patronizing and name drops for specific states.
Last month, I took on Big Pharma.
You've been really good to them so far.
You think that's easy? It's not. And signed orders that will massively lower the cost of your prescription drugs.
That has yet to be seen. Experts are skeptical.
And give critically ill patients access to life-saving cures. We passed the decades-long-awaited right to try.
For some context here, right to try allows critically ill patients to try experimental treatments to see if those will work. Right now, we have a record of an entire 2 people who have taken advantage of that system. Wonderful.
Right to try.
This audience doesn't even know what that is.
We also passed VA accountability and VA choice. Our great veterans, we're taking care of our veterans.
Said every politician ever.
91% approval rating this month, the VA, given by our veterans. First time anything like that's ever happened. By the end of my first term, we will have approved more than 300 federal judges, including 2 great new Supreme Court justices.
One of whom you hurried into office without thoroughly checking whether he was a rapist.
And to bring prosperity to our forgotten inner cities, we worked hard to pass historic criminal justice reform.
Oh yeah, the bipartisan First Step Act, which you promptly underfunded. You also reinstated contracts with private prisons, continued the war on drugs, and supported civil asset forfeiture, which is basically robbery by cop.
Prison reform. opportunity zones,
Opportunity zones haven't been shown to work so far. They're basically location-based tax cuts.
and long-term funding of historically black colleges and universities.
Legislation for that act began under Obama.
And before the China virus came in, produced the best unemployment numbers for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans ever recorded.
Continuing a trend started by Obama.
And I say very modestly that I have done more for the African American community than any president since Abraham Lincoln.
You ain't done jack shit. You continue the war on drugs, which devastates poor communities.
And I have done more in 3 years for the black community than Joe Biden has done in 47 years.
That's not a high bar to clear, considering Biden literally wrote the crime bill.
And when I'm reelected, the best is yet to come.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
When I took office, the Middle East was in total chaos. ISIS was rampaging, Iran was on the rise, and the war in Afghanistan had no end in sight.
Under your administration, nothing has changed.
I withdrew from the terrible one-sided Iran nuclear deal.
Iran promised not to develop nuclear weapons, and you just backed out of that.
Unlike many presidents before me, I kept my promise, recognized Israel's true capital, and moved our embassy to Jerusalem.
Israel has repeatedly violated international law by invading and occupying Palestinian territory, and you support them? Let me be clear here. We have allied with Israel for purely strategic reasons, because they buy our weapons so that they can use it to bully neighboring countries. They are not good people.
We also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And this month we achieved the first Middle East peace deal in 25 years.
And importantly, once again snubbing Palestine.
In addition, we obliterated 100% of the ISIS caliphate and killed its founder and leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
ISIS has not been defeated. Our increased aggression in the Middle East will only lead to the creation of more radicals, further bolstering their cause.
Then in a separate operation, we eliminated the world's #1 terrorist by far, Qasem Soleimani.
Soleimani was a hero in Iran, and we still don't know the full effects of what is going to happen. You could have started World War III.
Unlike previous administrations, I have kept America out of new wars.
You did your best not to.
And our troops are coming home.
So far, not only have you not ended Middle East aggression, you've actually expanded them.
We have spent nearly $2.5 trillion on completely rebuilding our military, which was very badly depleted when I took office, as you know.
When you took office, the military budget was already larger than that of the next 9 countries combined, and you expanded that to 10. We could slash our military budget in half and still be by far the strongest superpower in the world, and we could start repaying the national debt or investing in needed areas.
This includes 3 separate pay raises for our great warriors. We also launched the Space Force.
Yes! Space Force! Yes! I mean, it's not a bad idea, but do we really need it right now?
Biden voted for the NAFTA disaster, the single worst trade deal ever enacted.
Or USMCA is barely any different.
He supported China's entry into the World Trade Organization, one of the greatest economic disasters of all time.
Aren't you supposed to be pro-free market? Study after study shows that international trade helps everyone.
After those Biden calamities, the United States lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. We laid off workers in Michigan, Ohio, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and many other states.
Gotta pander to the swing states, am I right?
They didn't want to hear Biden's hollow words of empathy. They wanted their jobs back. As vice president, he supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a death sentence for the U.S. auto industry.
Joe Biden literally bailed out the auto industry in the Great Recession.
He backed the horrendous South Korea trade deal. which took many jobs from our country and which I've reversed and made a great deal for our country.
Your revision will make no significant changes.
He repeatedly supported mass amnesty for illegal immigrants. He voted for the Iraq War.
Initially, you supported it too.
He opposed the mission to take out Osama bin Laden. He opposed killing Soleimani.
Because our countries have been on the brink of war for years.
He oversaw the rise of ISIS.
The fuck does that mean?
And cheered the rise of China as a positive development for America and the world. Some positive development.
At the time, so did you.
That's why China supports Joe Biden and desperately wants him to win. I can tell you that upon very good information.
You're leaving out the fact that that same good information says Russia wants you to win.
China would own our country if Joe Biden got elected.
Citation fucking needed.
Unlike Biden, I will hold them fully accountable for the tragedy that they caused all over the world.
China made mistakes for sure, but we here have had more COVID cases than all of China, even though they originated with the virus. That is some serious level incompetence.
In recent months, our nation and the world has been hit by the once-in-a-century pandemic that China allowed to spread around the globe. They could have stopped it, but they allowed it to come out.
And you could have greatly reduced the spread of coronavirus, but you didn't. You were too busy calling it a hoax.
We are grateful to be joined tonight by several of our incredible nurses and first responders.
Okay, I don't care about your stupid stories.
And when the China virus hit,
your usage of the terms China virus and Kung flu are a way of deflecting blame onto China for your mistakes. But Kung flu's a pretty funny name, I'll admit.
We launched the largest national mobilization since World War II.
Government-ordered economic action? That sounds like socialism.
Invoking the Defense Production Act.
Far too late, I might add.
We produced the world's largest supply of ventilators.
And yet, hospitals all over the country are still low on supplies.
Not a single American who has needed a ventilator has been denied a ventilator, which is a miracle.
People have also had to wait in line hours to get tests and waited weeks for results.
We shipped hundreds of millions of masks, gloves, and gowns to our frontline healthcare workers.
Even so, healthcare workers have experienced a massive shortage in protective equipment.
To protect our nation's seniors, we rushed supplies, testing kits, and personnel to nursing homes. We gave everything you can possibly give, and we're still giving it because we're taking care of our senior citizens. The Army Corps of Engineers built field hospitals, and the Navy deployed our great hospital ships. We developed from scratch the largest and most advanced testing system anywhere in the world. America has tested more than every country in Europe put together, and more than every nation in the Western Hemisphere combined. Think of that.
Our testing only needed to be that high because our epidemic was so bad.
We have conducted 40 million more tests than the next closest nation, which is India.
China may have tested more than we did.
We developed a wide array of effective treatments, including a powerful antibody treatment known as convalescent plasma. You saw that on Sunday night when we announced it. That will save thousands and thousands of lives.
That actually hasn't been demonstrated yet. More research is needed. But you have also peddled quack cures like hydroxychloroquine.
Thanks to advances, we have pioneered the fatality rate, and you look at it and you look at the numbers, it has been reduced by 80% since April. 80%.
That number is misleading because it may be that it's just been a lot of young people walking around and spreading it among themselves.
The United States has among the lowest case fatality rates of any major country anywhere in the world. The European Union's case fatality rate is nearly 3 times higher than ours, but you don't hear that. They don't write about that. They don't want to write about that. They don't want you to know those things.
Because it's not a reliable indicator.
Altogether, the nations of Europe have experienced a 30% greater increase in excess mortality than the United States. Think of that.
Overall, countries in Europe have been doing much better than America in total, though. And guess what? They all have socialized Medicare.
We enacted the largest package of financial relief in American history. Thanks to our Paycheck Protection Program, we have saved or supported more than 50 million American jobs.
Under you, our economy has slipped into the greatest recession since the Great Depression.
That's one of the reasons that we're advancing so rapidly with our economy.
You used the CARES Act to pass massive bailouts and benefits to huge megacorporations. Meanwhile, average American citizens have gotten checks that are smaller by far compared to all other developed countries.
As a result, we have seen the smallest economic contraction of any major Western nation.
That tends to happen when you have such a big country and only parts of it are affected at a time.
And we are recovering at a much faster rate than anybody.
Because you are risking human lives by sacrificing them to the machine of the economy.
Over the past 3 months, we have gained over 9 million jobs, and that's a record in the history of our country.
Who knew that some of the people who were fired got rehired?
Unfortunately, from the beginning, our opponents have shown themselves capable of nothing but a partisan ability to criticize. When I took bold action to issue a travel ban on China very early indeed, Joe Biden called it hysterical and xenophobic. And then I introduced a ban on Europe very early again.
You used the opportunity to advance an agenda that you already had. Shutting down the country actually wouldn't help because the problem was already within our borders.
If we had listened to Joe, hundreds of thousands more Americans would have died.
If Joe Biden were leading us, he wouldn't have disbanded the pandemic task force months before the coronavirus happened.
Instead of following the science, Joe Biden wants to inflict a painful shutdown on the entire country.
Instead of listening to the scientists, you have peddled things like hydroxychloroquine and also told people that coronavirus was just a flu.
His shutdown would inflict unthinkable and lasting harm on our nation's children, families, and citizens of all backgrounds.
You know what would cause lasting harm? People dying.
The cost of the Biden shutdown, economic devastation, job loss, and much more.
It's worth it to sacrifice lives to keep the machine of the economy running, to benefit billionaires. Oh yeah, the billionaires. They have actually gotten richer over this pandemic.
Joe Biden's plan is not a solution to the virus, but rather it's a surrender to the virus.
You're going to surrender to the virus by stopping it from spreading?
My administration has a very different approach. To save as many lives as possible, we are focusing on the science, the facts, and the data.
No, you're not. You've been downplaying the virus and peddling quack cures since the beginning.
We are aggressively sheltering those at highest risk, especially the elderly, while allowing lower-risk Americans to safely return to work and to school. And we want to see so many of those great states be opened by Democrats. We want them to be open. They have to be open. They have to get back to work. They have to get back to work, and they have to get back to school.
Many of these schools, after opening, had to shut down immediately because coronavirus spread. Who could have guessed?
Most importantly, we are marshaling America's scientific genius to produce a vaccine in record time. Under Operation Warp Speed,
Hey, look, the free market economy isn't the one driving innovation.
we have 3 different vaccines in the final stage of trials right now, years ahead of what has been achieved before. Nobody thought it could ever be done this fast. Normally it would be years, and we did it in a matter of a few months.
Or if you hadn't disbanded the pandemic task force, we could have gotten into it early and had the vaccine by now.
We're producing them in advance so that hundreds of millions of doses will be quickly available. We will have a safe and effective vaccine this year.
Maybe.
And together, we will crush the virus. At the Democrat convention, you barely heard a word about their agenda. But that's not because they don't have one. It's because their agenda is the most extreme set of proposals ever put forward by a major party nominee.
I fucking wish. Joe Biden's plans are the most middle-of-the-road Democratic establishment plans ever.
Joe Biden may claim he is an ally of the light, but when it comes to his agenda, Biden wants to keep us completely in the dark.
His platform and plans are far more detailed than yours.
He has pledged a $4 trillion tax hike on almost all American families,
75% of the tax increases will come from the 1%.
which will totally collapse our rapidly improving economy.
His corporate taxes will be lower than they were under Obama.
And once again, record stock markets that we have right now will also collapse.
Actually, Wall Street is very happy with the choices of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
That means your 401ks, that means all of the stocks that you have.
87% of all the stocks are owned by the top 10%.
On the other hand, just as I did in my first term, I will cut taxes even further for hardworking moms and dads. I will not raise taxes. I will cut them, and very substantially.
Your tax cuts in 2017 have not contributed to a sustained economic growth. Also, haven't we contributed enough to the national debt already?
We will also provide tax credits to bring jobs out of China back to America, and we will impose tariffs on any company that leaves America to produce jobs overseas.
Your trade wars hurt the American people.
We will make sure our companies and jobs stay in our country, as I've already been doing for quite some time, if you've noticed.
Manufacturing jobs in America have not increased under you.
Joe Biden's agenda is made in China.
Joe Biden's Buy American plan actually forces the federal government to buy from American companies if at all possible.
My agenda is made in the USA. Biden has promised to abolish the production of American oil, coal, shale, and natural gas.
He has not promised to do that.
Millions of jobs will be lost, and energy prices will soar.
Joe Biden is going to invest $10 trillion into a new green economy, which will create 10 million new jobs.
These same policies led to crippling power outages in California just last week. Everybody saw that.
California is short on power because of global warming. The temperatures are high, and so everybody is turning on their air conditioners.
Joe Biden's campaign has even published a 110-page policy platform. You can't get away from this. Co-authored with far-left Senator Crazy Bernie Sanders. The Biden-Bernie manifesto calls for suspending all removals of illegal aliens, implementing nationwide catch and release,
So many neo-fascist scare words.
and providing illegal aliens with free taxpayer-funded lawyers. Everybody gets a lawyer. Come on over to our country. Everybody has a lawyer. We have a lawyer for you. That's what we need is more lawyers.
Public defense attorneys are in short supply.
Joe Biden recently raised his hand on the debate stage and promised to your giveaway, he was going to give it away, your health care dollars to illegal immigrants, which is going to bring massive number of immigrants into our country. Massive numbers will pour into our country in order to get all of the goodies that they want to give, education, health care, everything.
Immigration is generally a good thing.
He also supports deadly sanctuary cities that protect criminal aliens.
More xenophobic language. We have not been able to demonstrate that illegal immigrants are more likely to commit crimes.
He promised to end national security travel bans from jihadist nations.
People in those nations are not necessarily jihadist, you racist fuck.
And he pledged to increase refugee admissions by 700%.
Why do you want to turn down refugees?
This is in the manifesto.
More alarmist scare
The Biden
tactics.
plan would eliminate America's borders
It will not.
in the middle of a global pandemic.
Believe it or not, the coronavirus is already inside our country.
And he's even talking about taking the wall down. How about that?
Biden has not said that.
Biden also vowed to oppose school choice and close all charter schools, ripping away the ladder of opportunity for black and Hispanic children.
Biden has not said that.
In a second term, I will expand charter schools and provide school choice to every family in America.
First of all, charter schools don't work. Second of all, school choice doesn't work either. If everybody had school choice, then everybody would leave the bad schools and flood to the good schools. So once the good schools are overtaxed with too many children, they will become bad schools. So instead of having some good schools and some bad schools, you'll have all bad schools. Now, another consideration is that not all children have the means to transport themselves to better schools. They have to stay in the public schools. So, when other children are leaving the school district and taking money away from the programs, local school will lose funding, making their education system even worse. Trump's true agenda is to funnel money away from public schools and into private religious schools. Trump wants to privatize education, which will not only create indoctrinal echo chambers, it will also disadvantage the common person.
Joe Biden claims he has empathy for the vulnerable, yet the party he leads supports the extreme late-term abortion of defenseless babies right up until the moment of birth.
Not all Democrats support that.
Democrat leaders talk about moral decency, but they have no problem with stopping a baby's beating heart.
Heartbeat laws are unscientific bullshit.
In the 9th month of pregnancy, Democrat politicians refuse to protect innocent life.
If you cared about innocent life, you would be vegan. If you want to talk about abortion, we have to talk personhood. There is a strong argument to be made that babies do not have personhood.
And then they lecture us about morality and saving America's soul. Tonight, we proudly declare that all children, born and unborn, have a God-given right to life.
Here's the problem. Whenever you use God to justify anything, that immediately stops all conversation. How do I know I'm right? I think my God said it, and if my God says it, it must be right. No questions asked, no evidence taken, nothing whatsoever. A fetus's right to life does not supersede the right of a mother to not have her body invaded by a parasite.
During the Democrat convention, the words "under God" were removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. Not once, but twice.
Oh no! My God! His feelings must be so hurt that he was left out of a supposedly secular government.
We will never do that.
Including the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance, especially in public schools, normalizes the idea that God exists, which he doesn't, to children. This is a clear Establishment Clause violation.
But the fact is, this is where they're coming from. Like it or not, this is where they're coming from.
What a snowflake.
If the left gains power, they will demolish the suburbs.
Lies.
Confiscate your guns.
I wish.
And appoint justices who will wipe away your Second Amendment and other constitutional freedoms.
That doesn't even make any sense. Justices are supposed to enforce the Constitution. How can they nullify the Constitution that they're supposed to enforce?
Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism.
I fucking wish. He has not given the left any concessions. Green New Deal, no legalization of marijuana, no Medicare for all, nothing.
If Joe Biden doesn't have the strength to stand up to wild-eyed Marxists like Bernie Sanders and his fellow radicals, and there are many.
Bernie Sanders is in no way radical. He is a center-left politician who wants to bring the party more in line with the Nordic model, which has been shown to provide the best lives in the world.
There are many, many. We see him all the time. It's incredible, actually. Then how is he ever going to stand up for you? He's not.
Let's see. 70% of Americans support Medicare for all. Is that not for the people?
The most dangerous aspect of the Biden platform is the attack on public safety. The Biden-Bernie manifesto calls for abolishing cash bail.
As these days, bail is so high that people can't pay it. It's basically prison for the poor.
Immediately releasing 400,000 criminals onto the streets and into your neighborhoods.
Dangerous criminals will not receive bail. Only the ones who have not committed violent crime.
When asked if he supports cutting police funding, Joe Biden replied, yes, absolutely.
No, I don't support defunding the police.
When Congresswoman Ilhan Omar called the Minneapolis Police Department a cancer that is rotten to the root,
Is she wrong?
Biden wouldn't disavow her support and reject her endorsement. He proudly displayed it in big letters. Make no mistake, if you give power to Joe Biden, the radical left will defund police departments all across America.
I fucking wish.
They will pass federal legislation to reduce law enforcement nationwide. They will make every city look like Democrat-run Portland, Oregon.
No, Democrats won't send troops to invade their own cities.
No one will be safe in Biden's America.
Lies, lies, and more lies.
My administration will always stand with the men and women of law enforcement.
If you care about law enforcement, you would invest in better training. You will restrict them to being crime solvers, not serving as all-purpose dispute managers. Those roles would be better suited for more specialized officials. An anecdote about a police department that supports him.
Rudy Giuliani knows that better than anybody.
That's the first time anybody accused Rudy Giuliani of knowing anything. Another pointless endorsement from another pointless person.
We must remember that the overwhelming majority of police officers in this country, and that's the overwhelming majority, are noble, courageous, and honorable.
Sure, but that doesn't change the fact that they don't have good training, and they have too much funding that could otherwise be diverted to community programs which could stop crimes at the source.
We have to give law enforcement, our police, back their power.
They already have power. They have like qualified immunity, which makes them basically unable to be sued by anybody for basically any reason. Power often corrupts, and when you give so much power to an individual, they have the ability to create much more destruction than anybody else. Do you think we'd hate you this much if you weren't president? No, it's because you're a bad president who's used his power in terrible ways.
They are afraid to act. They are afraid to lose their pension. They are afraid to lose their jobs.
That's a good thing, isn't it?
And by being afraid, they are not able to do the job that they so desperately want to do for you.
Body cameras, better training, defunding the police, those are all ways we can help without making police feel afraid.
And those who suffer most are the great people who they protect and who they want to protect at an even higher level. When there is police misconduct, the justice system must hold wrongdoers fully and completely accountable. And it will.
The officers who killed Breonna Taylor are still free.
But when we can never have a situation where things are going on as they are today, we must never allow mob rule. We can never allow mob rule.
Who are you talking to but a mob? By calling something a mob, you are implying that the group members are just following the bandwagon rather than thinking through the decision themselves. It may be true that many Black Lives Matter protesters don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but that doesn't take away from the fact that defunding the police is a good idea that's easily justifiable.
In the strongest possible terms, the Republican Party condemns the rioting, looting, arson,
Who the fuck doesn't?
and violence we have seen in Democrat-run cities all.
It's almost as if Black Lives Matter is more popular among blacks, who are more likely to be Democrat.
There is violence and danger in the streets of many Democrat-run cities throughout America.
Yet dangerous states are more likely to be run by Republicans.
This problem could easily be fixed if they wanted to. Just call. We're ready to go in. We'll take care of your problem in a matter of hours. Just call.
The rioters are protesting against your police invasions. Sending even more police will bring out even more rioters.
We have to wait for the call. It's too bad we have to, but we have to wait for the call. We must always have law and order.
In other words, oppressive silencing against dissent.
All federal crimes are being investigated, prosecuted, and punished to the fullest extent of the law. When the anarchists started ripping down our statues and monuments right outside,
They're not anarchists.
I signed an order immediately. 10 years in prison.
That's right, a non-violent offender is going to rot away in a jail cell.
And it was a miracle. It all stopped. No more statues. During their convention, Joe Biden and his supporters remained completely silent about the rioters and criminals spreading mayhem in Democrat-run cities. They never even mentioned it during their entire convention. Never once mentioned.
That's because crime has been at historic lows since Obama. Without the current cultural unrest, this would not be a problem.
Now they're starting to mention it because their poll numbers are going down like a rock in water.
Or still down bigly in the polls.
In the face of left-wing anarchy and mayhem in Minneapolis, Chicago, and other cities.
This is not a left-wing thing. One second you're accusing everybody of being leftists who want to control you with the government and expand government power. And now you're calling leftists anarchists?
Joe Biden's campaign did not condemn it. They donated to it. At least 13 members of Joe Biden's campaign staff donated to a fund to bail out vandals, arsonists, anarchists, looters, and rioters from jail.
A police officer was shot.
As long as I am president, we will defend the absolute right of every American citizen to live in security, dignity, and peace. If the Democrat Party wants to stand with anarchists, agitators, rioters, looters, and flag burners, that is up to them.
They are not doing that.
But I, as your president, will not be a part of it. The Republican Party will remain the voice of the patriotic heroes who keep America safe and salute the American flag.
Ugh, so much virtue signaling.
Last year, over 1,000 African Americans were murdered as a result of violent crime in just 4 Democrat-run cities.
It's almost as if African Americans vote for Democrats more often.
The top 10 most dangerous cities in the country are run by Democrats and have been for many decades.
The most dangerous states are often Republican.
Thousands more African Americans are victims of violent crime in these communities. Joe Biden and the left ignore these American victims. I never will.
Then why don't you fight poverty, end the war on drugs, and do everything you can to make sure all of our Americans have their needs met?
If the radical left takes power, they will apply their disastrous policies to every city, town, and suburb in America.
If the radical left controlled the country, poverty would be way down, education would be way up, and crimes would be lowered as a result.
Just imagine if the so-called peaceful demonstrators in the streets were in charge of every lever of power in the U.S. government. Just think of that.
Imagine if your QAnon conspiracy theorists' followers were in power. They'd crush freedom of dissent, speech, and expression, and within years we would have a neo-fascist state.
Liberal politicians claim to be concerned about the strength of American institutions. But who exactly is attacking them? Who is hiring the radical professors?
There are more socialist professors because socialism is more philosophically tenable.
Judges and prosecutors. Who is trying to abolish immigration enforcement and establish speech codes designed to muzzle dissent?
We've sent secret police and federal troops to invade our own cities to silence dissent in peaceful protesters. It's not like you're so great on free speech either. You call anybody who disagrees with you fake news, a hoax, and even treasonous.
In every case, the attacks on American institutions are being waged by radical left.
If you wanted to get rid of leftism in institutions of higher learning, you'd have to get rid of the higher learning.
Always remember, they are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Who is you exactly? Because socialism is always about fighting for the working class.
And remember this, they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Why don't you use your personal lawyer, the Justice Department, to prosecute? Oh wait, you can't, because you have no evidence and you know it.
Let's see now what happens. We must reclaim our independence from the left's repressive mandates.
Is the left a bunch of violent anarchists, or are they a bunch of authoritarian control freaks? Choose one.
Americans are exhausted trying to keep up with the latest lists of approved words and phrases and the ever more restrictive political decrees.
You are jabbing at the base level identity politics culture war because you know you cannot stand up to the rigor of leftist academia.
Many things have a different name now, and the rules are constantly changing. The goal of cancel culture is to make decent Americans live in fear of being fired.
I want to speak about cancel culture. You literally called on your supporters to boycott Goodyear because they said something that you didn't like. Let's be clear here. You are for free speech for me, but not for thee.
Expelled, shamed, humiliated, and driven from society as we know it. The far left wants to coerce you into saying what you know to be false and scare you out of saying what you know to be true.
This is a transphobic dog whistle.
Joe Biden is weak. He takes his marching orders from liberal hypocrites who drive their cities into the ground while fleeing far from the scene of the wreckage.
You're talking. You blame China for all the coronavirus problems, even though you are the primary cause of its expansion. You are the one who's increasing the national debt so that Democrats will have to go in and take care of it later on. You're the one slashing environmental regulations so that your economy can improve in the short term, while later on, the future will have to pay the price for your mistakes for many generations. You're the one whose poor tax policies will lead to boom-bust cycles that Democrats will later have to come in and clean up.
These same liberals want to eliminate school choice.
Because the only way to make systemic change to our education system is to improve our public schools and implement a national education standard, preferably with a curriculum that includes mandatory high school philosophy, which will teach logic and reasoning to all people. If basic philosophy was taught to all students, we would achieve a socialist society within a century.
While they enroll their children in the finest private schools in the land.
So what?
They want to open our borders.
No, they don't.
While living in Waldorf compounds and communities in the best neighborhoods in the world.
So what?
They want to defund the police while they have armed guards for themselves.
Gated communities are actually no safer.
This November, we must turn the page forever on this failed political class.
Neoliberalism has failed the working class. As seen in the Nordic countries, social democracy is a good first step.
But I'll say it differently. The fact is, we're here and they're not.
That is the most establishment quote ever. Are you sure you're not part of the swamp? Actually, we all know the answer to that.
Together, we will write the next chapter of the great American story. Over the next 4 years, we will make America into the manufacturing superpower of the world.
Are all your economic views so antiquated? The service sector is the
We
future,
will expand opportunity zones,
which haven't been shown to work.
bring home our medical supply chains, and we will end our resilience. For bad things, we will go
Oh, really? You're against bad things?
right after China. We will not rely on them one bit.
Globalism is the future. We should be taking advantage of geographic advantages so that we can all get a better deal.
We're taking our business out of China. We are bringing it home.
There's no evidence you've done that.
We want our business to come home. We will continue to reduce taxes.
Supply-side economics has never worked. The national debt is high enough already, thank you.
And regulations at levels not seen before.
Prepare for economic disasters and boom-bust economies that we don't have the money to buy our way out of.
We will create 10 million jobs in the next 10 months.
No plan on how he's gonna do it.
And it'll be higher than that. We will hire more police,
The problem is we have too many police, and your solution? More police.
increase penalties for assaults on law enforcement.
Well, I'm not sure that's possible, because currently the penalty for not complying with law enforcement is death.
And surge federal prosecutors into high crime communities.
This is the guy the Republican Party touted as the one who is for criminal justice reform. Instead of sending resources to low-class communities in order to give them a shot, you're going to introduce more draconian measures to increase fear, reduce the amount of business investment in those areas, and keep the poor poor.
We will ban deadly sanctuary cities and ensure that federal health care is protected for American citizens, not for illegal aliens.
Even though you supposedly hate speech codes, you seem to be relying on right-wing political correctness a whole lot.
We will have strong borders. And I've said for years, without borders, we don't have a country. Don't have a country. Strike down terrorists who threaten our people.
Are you going to fight the terrorists and create more terrorists in the process? Or are you going to pull out of the Middle East? Choose one.
And keep America out of endless and costly foreign wars.
What the actual fuck? It's not possible to do both.
We will appoint prosecutors, judges, justices who believe in enforcing the law, not enforcing their own political agenda.
You only say that because the law happens to align with your agenda. We should be changing the laws.
We will ensure equal justice for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed.
No, you're not. Whether it's the under God phrase or the abortion debate, you're constantly trying to insert your own religious beliefs into the public sphere.
We will uphold your religious liberty and defend your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms.
I too believe that everybody should be able to keep a private nuke in their backyard.
And if we don't win, your Second Amendment doesn't have a chance. I can tell you that.
I fucking wish.
Totally protected it. We will protect Medicare and Social Security.
Even as you abolish the payroll tax? I mean, I'm not even for Social Security, but this makes no sense.
We will always and very strongly protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
Even as you try to strike down Obamacare, which does just that.
We will end surprise medical billing.
Trump has no health care plan.
Require price transparency and further reduce the cost of prescription drugs and health insurance premiums. They're coming way down.
He has not outlined how.
We will greatly expand energy development, continuing to remain the #1 in the world and keep America energy independent.
Yeah, fuck the rest of the world. So what if we're causing global warming? What are they gonna do about it?
And for those of you that still drive a car, look how low your gasoline bill is. You haven't seen that in a long time.
People aren't driving because of the pandemic, idiot.
We will win the race to 5G.
Bro, we already lost.
And build the world's best cyber and missile defense, already under construction. We will fully restore patriotic education to our schools.
Patriotic education is not education at all. Anybody who learns anything about American history knows that the story of America is one of hypocrisy and oppression.
And always protect, we will always protect free speech on college campuses.
Yeah, fuck you. You only cite that when it's convenient to your own position.
And we put a very big penalty in. They do anything having to do with your free speech.
You have fought to expand libel laws far beyond their constitutional scope.
Colleges have to pay a tremendous financial penalty. And again, it's amazing how open they've been lately.
Trump's neo-fascist anti-intellectualism is seriously scary.
We will launch a new age of American ambition in space. America will land the first woman on the moon.
Fucking who's playing identity politics now? I don't care about the genitals of the person on the moon.
And the United States will be the first nation to plant its beautiful flag on Mars,
where the ultraviolet radiation from the sun will almost instantly bleach it white. Also, how pretentious is it for Americans to believe that they can just claim a planet by planting a piece of cloth on it? This is just so stupid.
This is the unifying national agenda that will bring our country together. So tonight I say to all Americans, this is the most important election in the history of our country.
You know, he doesn't believe that for the right reasons. He just thinks it's important because it's all about him.
There has never been such a difference between two parties or two individuals in ideology.
You serious? Both of them are corporate-run capitalistic machines. Both of them have basically identical foreign policy where they're a bunch of war hawks who just mess everything up in the Middle East and imperialize other countries. Both parties are rotten to the core, and if there's any way to get us out of the two-party duopoly, we should take it.
Philosophy.
You have no philosophy. All you have is fear, paranoia, and an extreme nationalist identity.
Or vision. than there is right now. Our opponents believe that America is a depraved nation. We want our sons and daughters to know the truth. America is the greatest and most exceptional nation in the history of the world.
No, it's not. America claims to be high and mighty, but in reality, it lags behind the rest of the developed world in almost all aspects. We're just a military powerhouse that pretends to be the justice arbiter of the world. If you could describe America in one word, it would be hypocrisy.
Our country wasn't built by cancel culture.
Are you kidding? America canceled Thomas Paine for not being Christian.
Speech codes and soul-crushing conformity.
Conformity? Your party is the one that wants everybody to fall into their traditional regressive gender roles. The pseudo-liberal identity politics of the day are very unpleasant, but if anybody has actually defended the rights of free speech, it's been the leftists. Why? Because leftists actually rock the political boat. The big businesses and corporations will do everything they can to make sure leftists don't reduce their profits. Do not fall for the bullshit of the culture war.
We are not a nation of timid spirits.
Blah, blah, fucking blah. The only unique thing about Americans is our irrationality. We are the Dunning-Kruger effect embodied.
Anyone can rise with hard work, devotion, and drive. You can reach any goal and achieve every ambition.
Tell that to the poor worker who has 2 jobs and still is only paid starvation wages and is unable to pay the rent. System is rigged by the big corporations against us and in their own favor. They will do anything they can to keep us as their wage slaves and will do all that is in their power to give the working class as little as possible.
Our American ancestors.
I don't care about our predecessors. They had their own problems that they failed to fix.
Americans build their future. We don't tear down our past.
Our past is nothing to build statues about and worship. America is so great. Oh, yes.
For America, nothing is impossible.
Maybe America's penchant for ruined potential is the reason why I hate it so much.
Over the next 4 years, we will prove worthy of this magnificent legacy. We will reach stunning new heights, and we will show that the world, for America, there is a dream, and it is not beyond your reach.
When 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, I'd say it is.
Together we are unstoppable. Together we are unbeatable. Because together we are the proud citizens of the United States of America. And on November 3rd, we will make America safer.
Nobody has endangered American citizens more than you.
We will make America stronger. We will make America prouder. And we will make America greater than ever before.
I don't think you'll clear even that low bar.
I am very, very proud to be the nominee of the Republican Party. I love you all. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
God doesn't exist. Please let all these idiots get coronavirus. I would love for them to be removed from the gene pool.
I'm and I approve this message.